Here's a place where all of us can be safe. Our stories of transformation can be safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while, because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys. Hello, all my Safe Space friends. Today I have Karin McLean. She is an author, a mother, a wife, and a survivor. She has put that survival story into a book titled Bright Days Do Come, A Journey of Lost Light and Signs from Beyond. She was gracious enough to send me a copy that I could read before this interview, and the first time I opened the pages, I got 50% of the book read in the first day. Page turner, couldn't put it down. Within the first 10 pages, I was crying. I felt the emotions. I felt everything. And I was seeing the story as I was on the outside looking in at all of this. I took a couple days to integrate what I read, and then I finished up the rest of it. And not only is it an inspiring novel, it is a true story. And she's extremely vulnerable about the things that she went through before, during, and after the accident. So having her on today is a privilege for me because I got to read the book, but also a privilege for us to hear more of the behind the scenes and just hear from the author herself about the truth of loved ones being able to communicate with us after they move on. We really don't die in a sense that we think we do in the physical world, and bright days do come. So Karin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute privilege to be here. So I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, I've been looking forward to this for weeks, and
I've
been stalking your website and just getting, all the information that I can on you. And like I said, I know I left a review on Amazon. I believe reviewing any author's books, it just helps them tremendously with all the rankings that we go through. But your book, in my opinion, has touched my life for the better. It has inspired me in ways. I remember how I felt when I was reading the book. I just felt like so much calm and so much peace, and any of the layers that kind of get trapped all over me, kind of like that smudge all over my aura, it would just be lifted, and I could see a better viewpoint after reading it. And again, every page, like I would get to the end of a chapter and I would think, oh, I can just do one more chapter. I can just go one more. Because everything it was raw, it was real, but it was also really inspiring. So usually when people come on, especially with authors, we don't like to give the whole story away, but I know the whole book is your story. So wherever you would like to start the story and introduce yourself to us, take it away, and I will be happy to interject or ask questions in between.
Great. Okay. Well, and it means so much to me that my book touched you so much. And, that was the goal of my book, is that I knew it would reach the right people, and to just bring hope to people has been my whole goal. So I am appreciative that it did that for you. So appreciative. And I do appreciate that review so much too. It really does help us authors so tremendously. So thank you.
Happy to help.
Thank you. So my story began, I grew up LDS, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, widely known as the Mormon religion. So I grew up religious. When I was 18, my family and I decided to take a quick trip to a town called St. George, Utah. I'm from Utah. And that town is about 4 hours away from where we live. And I'm the oldest of 4. So at this time, I was 18. My next sibling under me was my sister Erica, who was 16 and had just recently gotten her driver's license. And then I also had a 14-year-old sister named Kristen and a 9-year-old brother named Brian. My parents were divorced. They are divorced. So my dad wasn't with us, but my mom was there. And since Erica had a brand new license, she decided, my mom and her had decided that it would be good for her to get some more experience under her belt and drive during this trip. So about an hour in, as we were driving, she leaned over to take a sip of her drink, and the car began to drift, and she overcorrected. When the car overcorrected, it began rolling, and we were heading south. And when the car finished rolling, we were facing north on the northbound side of the freeway. So we had rolled through the median, and the car flipped the other direction. And my mom and Erica in the front seats had their seatbelts on. Back then in the 90s, this was the year 1991, a new feature that was popular in cars was a feature called automatic seatbelts. So when you got in the car and turned on the engine, the seatbelt would automatically come around the car and buckle you in. And then you would manually buckle the lap belt, but the shoulder belt would automatically go on. My mom had told us to put our seatbelts on. And I remember saying, oh, nothing ever happens. Seatbelts aren't comfortable. And they weren't required by law back then. So I was sitting in the car behind my sister who was driving. My other sister was next to me, and our little brother Brian was in the very back seat. We were in a station wagon. And so when the car rolled, the three of us in the backs of the car were thrown. And my mom and sister were trapped inside the crushed car, and the jaws of life had to get them out. But what was miraculous about this experience is that there happened to be an emergency room doctor behind our car, and he was able to save my life and my legs. So he came running up to me, and he happened to have his medical kit in his car with him, and which was a miracle in itself, because I had many injuries and broken bones, including both of my femurs. And one of my femurs, the bone was a compound fracture, and that means the bone breaks through the skin. And I had landed in the median, and so there was a lot of dirt in that wound. And he thought, if she lives, she won't have her legs. But he had one bottle of saline in his kit that he poured into my open wound and saved it from infection. And then he did a lot of other life-saving things for me. And it was just a miracle that he was there. And so many people stopped to help. And my mom was able to retrieve a list of the people who stopped to help. And there were like 10 registered nurses that happened to stop. There were other EMTs, there were firemen, there were all these people with medical backgrounds who stopped to help us. So I know that was not by happenstance. And my sister Kristen and I and my brother Brian, we were all life flighted. Well, we were taken to a local hospital and then life flighted to trauma hospitals up in Salt Lake City where we lived. And so they found that once Brian got to the children's hospital, so he went to the children's hospital, and Kristen and I went to another hospital. And Brian, they found, so at the scene, he actually died at the scene, and they were able to revive him. But when he reached the hospital, they realized that he had no brain activity whatsoever. And the only thing keeping him alive were the life support machines. And so the following day, my parents had to make the decision no parent ever wants to make, to have his life support turned off. And during this time, I was fighting for my life and didn't know anything that was happening. And I didn't know that I didn't find out he had died until his funeral was already over with. And so that was really hard for me. It was angering, it was saddening, I had so many emotions around it. And, there was nothing that could be done to change that, and what I've kind of my mantra that I say a lot in life is, it is what it is. And that, it is what it is. And not, it's been hard to get through that, but there really is nothing I could do. And so that's been a difficult part of my journey. But when I started receiving signs from my brother, that's when everything changed. And, I was raised to know that, we don't die, we continue in spirit after this life. But you hear that, but you don't know it. And my brother showed me so that I knew it. And that's been the best part of this journey. And, this journey is it's a tragic journey, but it looking back on it now, I see all the gifts that it's brought me and my family. Like, it's taken us on these different paths that we would have never been on without it. And it's helped us to really cherish every moment and know how fragile life is. And the signs that my brother has given us have shown us that we do continue. Like, I have no doubt that we continue, because the signs I've gotten from my brother are just undeniable. And so yeah, all of the lessons I've learned from the accident have been life-changing. And it's taught me to have gratitude in my life as well. And, luckily, I was in a rehab. I had to go live in a rehab for 3 months. But I can walk now. I have my legs. I live a pretty much normal, pain-free life, given all the injuries that I had. And so I have so much gratitude. And when I hear people say, oh man, I didn't get a parking spot close to the store, we've got to walk. And it's like, oh, how sad. Be grateful. Be so grateful you can walk. Just every little thing. I've found so much gratitude in just every little thing in life. And the opportunities that happen, that present themselves to us in this life, they don't always look like this great opportunity, but they're not wrapped in a bow, but they are a gift that you can look back and see the gifts in the trials. And so that's kind of my background story of the accident, and where I've kind of some of the lessons I've learned.
While I was reading the book, I remember coming across the gratitude part, and that seems to be something that I always need to check back in my awareness all the time. You're going to have bad days no matter what. And in those moments, I'm like, okay, what am I grateful for? But then when I was reading the book, I was like, have I actually checked my gratitude lately? Has it kind of went to like the back burner with how busy life gets all the time? So throughout the book, I found that there's not only so many positive reminders that people can take with them, but the different ways that your loved ones can connect with you. So many through the book were inspiring, from your story, your sisters, your mothers, your fathers. My favorite are song syncs of people. You can just feel that was really meant for you. And I love that your family even made like a Brian playlist, and then you would all message each other, or even people outside of the family would message each other. Hey, I walked into a store, or I asked for the sign, and, within 24 hours, it came to me. How does that feel to continue that almost etheric relationship through those signs and things throughout your life?
Oh, I mean, excuse me, it feels incredible, because when you get when you get that, well, like a lot of times I've learned that asking for signs is really, really the key. There are a lot of different signs, common signs that you can get from your loved ones, feathers and coins and birds and butterflies and nature, things like that are common signs that our loved ones send us. But how often are we aware of those signs? There's so many times we could just walk right past it or not connect that, oh, that's a sign. And so to me, asking is the key. And so when I ask for a sign from my brother and he delivers, it just strengthens that connection, and it makes me so happy. And I've changed my perspective. The first while after the accident, it was like, oh, we only had Brian for 9 years, because he was 9 years old when the accident occurred, when he died. And I've learned to look and say, I got to have 9 years with this sweet angel boy. And also, instead of I've lost my brother, I don't have my brother, I have an angel now. I have an angel who I knew, who I know, who is my brother, who is by my side all the time, and he shows me that. And even in so he was born in 1982. And so over the years, I've asked him for an 82 as a sign. So I encourage people to think about what your loved one liked. Like what songs were their songs? What was their birth year? What was something they really loved? And ask them for that as a sign. And so over the years, I've asked him for 82s as a sign. And I started feeling this nudge to write a book. It was like someone was almost kind of nudging my shoulders. And, it kept getting stronger and stronger. And I thought, oh, well, I don't know how to write a book. I've always liked writing, but, you think about writing a book and it seems daunting and just the unknowns of, I don't know how to do that. And eventually the nudging got so strong. And I said, okay, Brian, if I am supposed to do this, I can't deny these nudges. If I'm supposed to do this, please give me an 82. Give me another 82. And that night I logged online to pay my credit card bill, and my balance staring back at me was his answer. It was 8282, which to me was like, hell yes, sister, you've got to write this book. And I had been telling myself, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do this. And I changed that perspective and thought, yeah, I don't know how to do it, but I will figure it out. And I went into the library. I took my kids to the library and I saw all the books there. And I just thought, all these people did it. And behind each book you see here, somebody did it. And so I started writing, and luckily I had journaled a lot of the signs that my brother had given me over the years. And because he wasn't alive when Facebook was a thing. And so I actually created a Facebook page for him years ago, because I wanted a place where family and friends could connect and could wish him a happy birthday, and a place where they could see all of his pictures. I uploaded every picture I have of him on his private Facebook page, and I invited all of his old friends. All of our family members are part of that. And whenever I'd get a sign, I would either journal it or I would share it on his page. And so I began by using that as a rough draft with everything. And I encourage people to write, when you get those signs from your loved ones, write them down, because over time the details fade, or you remember that you got a song from your loved one, but you don't quite remember the details around it. So I really encourage people to write them down. And then it's something really nice to look back on too, and to build. And before you know it, you'll have a book too of all the signs. And we started out talking about music. And so, there was a handful of songs that were popular at the time of Brian's death that he absolutely loved. And so whenever we hear those songs, we all think of Brian. And they're rare songs. I mean, they were in the late 80s, early 90s when they came out. So you really don't hear them very often. One of them was sung at his funeral. It was the song Somewhere Out There. And that song's really rare to hear. But I had this album. I was driving one day and I had this. It was the day I found out I was pregnant. And I was driving. I had driven up to go tell my mom in person that I was pregnant. And I had this album that contained almost 200 songs. And I had it set to shuffle. And on the way home, after seeing my mom, 2 of the songs came on right in a row. And I thought, okay, is that you, Brian? It's gotta be. That's Brian's way of congratulating me. And so the first song that came on was More Than Words by Extreme. And that's one of Brian's songs. And then the next song was Kokomo by the Beach Boys. And I called my mom and I told her, these 2 songs came on. I know it's Brian telling me congratulations because this album has almost 200 songs on it. It's on shuffle. I mean, what are the odds? The day I find out I'm pregnant and I'm celebrating, I come up to tell you that's his way of congratulating me. And she said, yeah, that's so amazing. And she said, wouldn't it be amazing if Somewhere Out There came on too? And I said, oh, that would be so amazing. But I don't have that song. And that would be amazing as well. And then we said goodbye so I could focus on driving. And after we got off the call with each other, I started thinking, was that really Brian? It can be easy to say, well, they were on the same album and maybe I'm just trying to make something out of nothing. Maybe it wasn't. It can be so easy to doubt the signs. And so I decided right then and there that I needed to know from Brian if those really were from him. And so I said out loud, I said, Brian, it's so easy to doubt. And I want to trust and know that these signs were really from you. So if those were sent from you, will you please play Somewhere Out There next? And I turned my iPod off. I flipped the radio station on and I took it off the alternative station that it was already set to because Somewhere Out There's not going to play on that. You need to make it somewhat possible for the signs to happen. And so I flipped it just to a station that might play that song. And the ads were running. And I thought, well, let's just see what happens. And the next song that came on was Somewhere Out There. And I was astounded. And I was driving and I was like, oh my gosh, Brian, thank you so much. You just confirmed that to me. This is incredible. And I called my mom and I turned up the volume on the radio and I held my phone up to the speaker and I said, listen to this, Mom. I said, what you just said. And I said, I asked Brian, I said, prove it to me that those songs were really from you. And I asked him for Somewhere Out There next. And here it is. And she couldn't believe it either. And we were absolutely blown away. And that's when I learned that you can ask for signs. And to me, asking for a sign is, you're not bothering your loved one. I think some people think, oh, they're busy. But it's like sending a text to your loved one and it sets the stage and puts you both on the same page because you know what to look for. They know what to deliver. And it's like, oh, I think it really helps our loved ones out because they're like, okay, I always think, oh, maybe a loved one wants your attention, so they mess with the light and they turn the light in the room on. But you walk past and you go, oh, I must have left that light on. You turn it off and they're going, that was a sign. So asking really puts you on the same page. And yeah, so I've learned to ask, and my family has learned to ask, and it really has been a way to show all of us that he's listening, he's there with us, and we can still have that connection, and he can let us know that he's still there by delivering those signs to us.
I think it's just a true testament of not only life does go on after our physical vessels go away, but unconditional love, source love, whatever people would like to refer to it as, it really, I mean, it is energy. It can't be destroyed. It's going to go on and on and on and on. But I know so often in the grieving process, people grieve so hard on the physical that they can miss those signs because they're stuck in grief. So I find it, no matter if I look at near-death experiences or past loved ones coming, just a tremendous knowing to have that continuously confirmed over and over that death isn't going to separate any of us, even if, obviously losing them is tremendously sad. And I'm honestly glad that I read this book before we did this interview, or I would just be crying my eyes out hearing all of these details for the first time. I feel very prepared hearing this story and just like able to, stay in the moment with it. But I'm picturing everything all over again. And two stories that come to mind is one, when I read the 82 part, because I used to ask for signs all the time and I kind of stopped. And then around the time that my grandma passed away in January, we had like a conversation way before she passed. And I was like, hey, when you get to the other side, if you want to give me a message, like, what are you going to come back as? So I know how you're going to communicate with me. And she always said she loved cardinals. So she's like, you'll see a cardinal, you'll know it's me. That'll be my thing. And I'm like, okay. And my grandpa is hummingbirds. He's still with us, but when that happens, I know. So a couple months after she had passed, I was helping Monroe understand, people's physical vessels pass away, but the energy, the love that we have for them, they're with us. And, we can talk to them even though we can't see them. I know it's hard for you to understand because you're 5, but, if you ever just want to talk to grandma, you can talk to her. It's no big deal. And within the week, I noticed there was a nest forming above my front door. And when so I sat there because I was wondering, like, is it a blue jay? Is it a robin? Like, what is it? And it was a cardinal's nest right above my front door.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. Oh
My
my
husband,
gosh.
was like, I need to go clean the gutters. I was like, you leave those gutters alone. My grandma's up there.
Yeah. I love that. Oh, and I love that you talked to your daughter about asking for signs and letting her know she can do that. And I did the same thing with my daughter, because Brian is her uncle, and I wanted her to, they've witnessed a lot of the signs, and I've shared all the signs that I've received from Brian with my kids, but she hadn't really experienced one for herself, and so I encouraged her to ask for a sign. So she asked Brian I said, what do you want to ask him for? You could ask him for a bird or even a frog or, anything. And it doesn't mean that you might see that bird in real life, or you might watch a TV show and there's that bird, or see a billboard or read a book. They can come in. It's not always just literal. And so she said, I want Finn the cat. And I said, who is Finn the cat? And she said, oh, he's this orange and white tabby that came into our backyard once. And I said, once? Okay. How long ago was this? Last summer. I'm like, oh, so a year ago. Okay. And, his name is Finn. And she said, yeah, his tag said Finn, on his collar. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, that might, that might be a little hard for Brian to deliver Finn the cat. But so how about let's ask for an orange and white tabby cat? And she said, okay. And within the hour, I went outside to throw some garbage away. I went out through our back garage door, and I looked over on our porch steps, and there was an orange and white tabby sitting there who had meowed at me and got my attention. So I went out to just toss the garbage, and I hear meow, and I turn, there's this cat. So I race inside, and I'm like, Sola, we just got our sign from Brian. Come outside. There's an orange and white cat. And she came out, and we ran up to the cat and turned his collar around, and it was Finn. And she said, Mom, I remember you told me not to get that specific, but we can. Brian showed you. He brought us Finn. And I just sensed, and I'll show you from Brian, just reaffirming to me that you can be specific. And I think it helps to be specific, like with the song too. I asked Brian for Somewhere Out There. I didn't say play one of your songs next. I was specific, and I had kind of forgotten that and thought, oh, that might be too hard for him. And he showed me that it's not. He showed us. And so that was an incredible experience for not only for me, but for my daughter to realize that she has that relationship with him. She can connect to him too. And I reminded her too, when you're in trouble, when you're having a hard time, or there's a situation that you're not comfortable in, you can always ask Brian to help you. And he's there, he's listening, and our loved ones, their energy, like you were saying, and their energy can either enter an animal's body or influence an animal's body. And so that's how they give us signs through animals, is they have that power through their new energy that they are. And I think it's so neat because there are so many cool signs from animals and birds, and it's
Butterflies.
it's amazing.
Those are another one I think of.
Yeah, I love that. Like my friend Carolyn, I share in the book. By the way, I love that you talked to your grandma before she passed, and that she told you she would be a cardinal, because we can ask our loved ones once they're gone, because they're not gone, they're still with us. But to establish that before they leave, I feel is even more powerful. And my friend Carolyn, she was really close to her mother-in-law, and before she passed, she and her sister-in-law were saying, Mom, what will you be? What sign will you give us? And she said, a butterfly. And then on Mother's Day, Carolyn was outside looking at the flowers that she planted every year for her mother-in-law. And it was Mother's Day, and she was thinking about her, just really focused on her mother-in-law. And she said, I hope you like the flowers. And on this giant butterfly the size of the palm of her hand landed on her shoulder and sat there for several moments and then flew away. And for that to happen at that time, as she's thinking of her mother-in-law, as she's saying, I hope you like the flowers, then comes a yellow butterfly, and yellow was her favorite color. She was obsessed with yellow. She was obsessed with flowers, and she said she would come back as a butterfly. And to have all that happen right on Mother's Day, right as she's thinking about her, there's no doubt. I don't know how.
I feel such a lightness in my body if I ask for something and then it's received. Sometimes I'll be like 48 hours, a week, because I know I'm going to feel it. I'm going to feel that resonance in my body. But I always tell people it's like a lift up for a moment. Like you can really feel it in your body when you're having that connection. And even though the signs momentarily, the connection almost feels momentarily. It lifts a lot of suffering that we're individually going through when we can remember that there's so much more going on than we can see, and there's so much love on the other side that is just cheering us on. So even if it's a penny or a feather or a bird or a butterfly, it's just it makes me want to keep going, if that makes sense. It makes me realize so many of the beliefs that I've searched so long to really instill and learn in myself are true. And I know that you say in the book that you were really interested in a lot of like near death experience stories, which I'm the same way. When I read those and I think how a lot of people kind of do have the same experience when they get there, when they're describing this beautiful love and just overwhelming sense of peace when they get there. Did those stories help you feel better about Brian's transition into the afterlife?
They did. Yeah, I started researching near-death experiences because I wanted to know where my brother was. I wanted to know where we're all eventually going. And I had had a couple things happen to me. I had a couple of mystical experiences, and I wanted to learn more about them and what they were. And so one of them was a few months after I'd gotten home from the rehab, where I lived in a rehab for 3 months after the accident. When I finally got home a few months later, I was asleep one night, and I woke up in the middle of the night. And whenever I wake up in the middle of the night, I just, my eyes are so tired, and I just look at the clock and then go back to sleep right away. But this night I woke up and I was alert. I was completely alert, wide awake, and my heart was burning with this sensation of all the love in the world. My entire life, I had never felt more happiness than I did when I woke up that night. And just to this day, I've never felt happier than I did that night. And I wanted so badly to wake my family up and just profess my love for them. And in reading all of the near-death experiences that I've read, people who have those experiences and they're on the other side, they're filled with this tremendous amount of love that's it's hard for them to describe because it's so powerful, and you really can't put words to it because it's this feeling that you've never really felt, and it's hard for me to explain. The best way for me to explain it is that it's like happiness on steroids. I have never felt that happy. And eventually I just was like, okay, breathe, calm down. Oh, I wanted to wake everybody up, but I didn't. And I finally went back to sleep. And when I woke up, I told my mom, what had happened. And we both were like, something you had to have had. My mom was like, you had to have had some kind of experience with Brian, some kind of out of body experience, perhaps. And, we thought, oh, well, it could have been this, and we've concluded it must have been an out of body experience. And although I wasn't allowed to remember, I don't remember why I felt that happiness, what I saw, where I was, if I was with Brian, what happened. But I don't think I was supposed to remember that for whatever reason. But the fact that I was able to remember and to be left with that feeling of love, that burning feeling of love. I mean, it felt like my heart was heated up. My heart was warm. It was burning with this just joy. And to wake up, to be left with that feeling so that I could relate to people when I read those experiences was incredible to be left with that. And there was another memory that came back to me over time was a near-death experience that I had, where I don't remember feeling that love, but I was in a dark place. And when you hear the word dark, I feel like most people automatically think, oh, bad or scary. It wasn't scary at all. It was so comforting. I just found myself floating in this pitch black darkness. I mean, darker than dark. It was like you're in outer space, but there are no stars. And I was just floating there. It felt like time stood still, and I felt comforted, and I felt like I was just pure consciousness, or connected to pure consciousness. And I almost felt like just a pair of eyes just floating in this. And I wasn't moving around or anything. I was just still, floating still in this darkness. And I felt all of this universal knowledge just filling me. And I remember thinking, oh, so this is what it's really all about. And although I didn't come back with that knowledge, if my best guess would be that it was something simple and profound, like love. Like, oh, it's that simple. It's all about love. And knowing that, when I was filled with that knowledge, I just wanted to get back into the game of life and play, because I knew how it worked. It's like when you know how to solve a puzzle, you want to put that last piece in, you've got that, finally know which piece you were looking for. And so that experience really changed me, but it did take me a long time to figure out exactly what it was, because most of the NDEs I'd researched and read about were involved, a tunnel with a bright light, with reuniting with loved ones, and that feeling of love. And, I'd had that feeling of love with my out-of-body experience. So I definitely related to that, but I didn't feel that during my NDE. And I know that each NDE is so different. There's no two that are the same, but overall, I didn't have the most common elements. So it took me a while. And the fact that in the accident, to my knowledge, I was never declared dead at any point. I know that by reading through my records that my pulse was barely detectable at one point, but I really believe that, or I've learned that that you can have an NDE when you're in a life-threatening situation, because your body can leave to get relief from that trauma you're in and the pain you're under. And so I know that that's when that happened. And there was never a defining moment where, I woke up, because I was in and out of consciousness for a while, and in and out of multiple surgeries after the accident. And so there was never a time where it was like, oh, that just happened yesterday. And I remember that, like, it slowly came to me over time. But I'm glad that I finally figured it out. And through my research, I was able to say, okay, to acknowledge it, because for so long I was like, well, I never died, so how could I have a near-death experience? Because to my knowledge, I never died. And then when I started hearing experiences where people would have that happen to get the relief from the pain they were in, it all made sense. And it was really nice to know that, and nice to know that, there are other people who have been in that darkness. And there's another author that I recently met, and she's incredible as well. And she said that at night she will put blankets over her and just try to recreate that darkness that she was in, because it was such a comforting darkness, even though it doesn't sound like darkness could be comforting, but it was. And when I heard her say that, I so related, because I do that same thing at night. I'm in my bed and I put all my covers and I close my eyes as tight as I can just to recreate it. And you can't recreate it. It was just the inkiest blackness that you can imagine. But
Is the one where people call it the void? And
yes,
I know you referenced that in the book, but I've seen that in other cases as well. Which when you didn't get to come back with the message, but you know it's profound and simple, and you put it down to obviously love. My whole body just got like full body chills. Anytime anybody brings that message back, it's so true. Not only can you hear it in a near-death experience or someone having, a revelation or an awakening, but honestly, if you look at a lot of art and a lot of musicians, they're telling all of these love stories just in, their own interpretation through their own vessels. So I've said this many times on the show, but I always believe when the Beatles said all you need is love, it was really a call to action.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're so right. I've never thought about that. Yeah, it's that simple. And I think we make life, we can make it so hard, or we can, get lost in the day to day, and just having that reminder that no, it's just all about love. And with every interaction you have with others, just leave them feeling loved. Leave every interaction, even just smiling at a stranger down the street. Your eyes, your smile are spreading that love to people. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important. And it sounds cheesy, but I love smiling and just spreading cheer around. And I've been called Colgate as a nickname before because I'm always smiling. But just spreading that love is so important, and that's what it's all about.
I think that's a beautiful testament from everything that you've been through, how dark, especially the rehabilitation process, and then the emotional healing that continues after everything you've been through. I definitely think that you are nudged 100% by Brian and maybe some other lovely spirit guides to write this book to encourage others who have been through a similar experience or just lost a loved one in general, that they are always with us. So I appreciate you coming on the show today, and I definitely appreciate you writing that book, because it really touched my heart, and it really inspired me to not only dig into my gratitude again, ask for my signs properly, know that they will be well received. And another thing you said on there really quick about the signs was, if you ask for it, you don't necessarily have to go looking for it. And I like that reminder as well, because there has been so often where I feel like I have to do more work than just asking. So you put a lot of guidance in the book. I will have all of the links below if anybody would like to purchase the book or check out your website or contact you in any way. But I just appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story with us and all of your lovely signs from Brian.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. I'm so grateful that I got to share, and I just love sharing, and so grateful that I could meet you. I love your podcast. You're an incredible host, and I am absolutely honored to be here.
Thank you.
I'm so honored that you read my book and that you loved it. And it really means so much.
I am gifting it. I hope my mom and my stepmom don't hear this episode before Christmas, but I am gifting it to them. If you ever write another book, if you have another story to tell, you're always welcome in the safe space. Thank you for coming in today. And friends, we will see you on the next episode. Please check that link below and get the book.